حقوق الإنسان كلنا كتو قيمة لكل يوم. You're listening to iRadio, your eye on South Sudan. This month marks the beginning of 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. This is a critical time for South Sudan to unite in its commitment to peace, which must start in our homes and communities. Violence against women and girls, whether physical, emotional or economic, is a human rights crisis. It tears apart our families and hinders the progress of our entire nation. The call this year is simple: act now, end digital violence against women and girls, safe space for all. Every one of us, men, women and youth, must challenge the harmful norms that allow abuse to continue. We must create safe spaces and support the survivors in our midst. Don't stay silent, don't look away. If you or someone you know is suffering from violence, please reach out to the local police or the nearest community leader in your area. Help is available. Stand in solidarity, end the violence, make our nation stronger. This message is brought to you by iRadio in support of the 16 Days of Activism campaign. The campaign runs until December 10th, Human Rights Day. Let's make every day count.
Welcome to the Sundown Show. On this show, we bring you the movers and shakers of South Sudan and the world over. We engage in debates and discussions that unearth the stories behind the news. And we have our light moments too by chit-chatting about issues that affect our day-to-day life. Stay right here on the Sundown. Join in and be part of the show on iRadio, your eye on South Sudan.
أهلا ومرحبا بكم في برنامج سانداون على آي راديو. في البرنامج ده بنستضيف شخصيات بارزة ومؤثرة من جنوب السودان ومن حول العالم، وبنتحدث معهم عن القضايا اللي بتهم بلدنا وبتأثر على حياتنا. كمان بنتطرق في القصص خلف الأخبار وبنتبادل الأحاديث الخفيفة عن حياتنا اليومية. شاركونا، كونوا جزء من البرنامج فقط على آي راديو، عينك على جنوب السودان.
Hello and welcome to the Sundown Show on iRadio with me, Madrama James. Today is Friday, December 5th, 2025. Tonight, we turn our attention to a major national dialogue held in Juba this week, a three-day gathering convened by the Center for Inclusive Governance, Peace, Justice, together with Civil Society Forum. The dialogue brought together government officials, civil society actors, youth and women leaders, faith-based group, and international partners to reflect on South Sudan peace journey, the challenges ahead, and the country's democratic transition. Guest of honor, Honorable Aduta Salfa, a senior presidential advisor for a special program, reaffirmed the government's commitment to peace and urge for patience, inclusivity, and continuous dialogue as the foundation for national reconciliation. She called for active youth engagement and a strong protection of vulnerable communities. Participants stressed the urgent need to fully implement the revitalized peace agreement, strengthening key institutions including the judiciary and the security sector, and safeguard civic space to ensure accountability and long-term stability. Aspirations raised by citizens range from peace and security to economic empowerment, health, infrastructure, agriculture, and protection of civic freedoms. International partners, including the government of Norway, UN Women, and the UN Peace Building Fund, were recognized for their role in supporting local peace building effort. As the dialogue concluded, one message stood out clearly: South Sudan can achieve enduring peace and democratic consolidation through courageous leadership, inclusive participation, and genuine commitment from all stakeholders. And tonight on the Sundown Show, we are joined by distinguished panel to unpack the outcomes and the way forward. I'm glad to be joined first by Jacqueline Nasiwa, Executive Director of the Center for Inclusive Governance, Peace and Justice, Advocate Juma from that Alam organization, and Galdino from Sunde, who also double as the chairperson of Civil Society Forum. Good to have you. First and foremost, allow me to invite Jacqueline Nasiwa to briefly tell us about the motivation behind the organization of these dialogue. Welcome on board.
Thank you, James, and good evening all iRadio listeners and to the South Sudanese at large. Thank you very much for hosting us here today, and as always, to be able to talk on pertinent issues of our nation. We had 3 days dialogue, as you indicated, from the 19th to 21st of November, and the dialogue is basically looking at how we can be able to de-escalate violence and accelerate peace efforts in South Sudan, and under the theme of mitigating risks and addressing challenges in South Sudan transition to democracy. So this is the underlying reason and the theme for why we convene. However, we had also objectives, what we want to achieve in all these 3 days of our discussions. And one of it is that we know that the country is having serious issues of peace agreement implementation and also sustaining peace and addressing challenges of security. For us is also very important, the women, peace and security agenda, which is protection, prevention of violence, and also participation in peace processes. We are aware of the ongoing violence in our country and also at the community level, where we are also facing community violence and proliferation of arms in the hands of civilians, and the ceasefire violation by the peace partners. So because of that, for long, like since 2013 to date, we have not had the opportunity to sustain peace so that people can be able to develop the nation. So as stakeholders and as civil society, we had the agreement, and the agreement was not fully implemented. And as you are aware, the 10% that was reported by the high-level standing committee to have been the percentage which is implemented during the extended periods. So that is alarming. If 10% is only implemented and 90% is not implemented, and then something has to be done. So that's why our civil society took us long to start discussing of how do we move away from the current stagnation of the peace agreement, and how do we make sure that violence is minimized at both national and also at the subnational level, and how can we build peace together. And that's why we had different campaigns during these 3 days that we want to carry forward. And one of it is dialogue for peace, no return to war, and also having women and young women for peace. So that means we are looking at the aspect of inclusivity and also de-escalating violence. And this is the motivation, and all of us are standing behind the no return to war and dialoguing for peace.
All right. Activist Jacqueline, as one of the focal person during the dialogue as well, what would you say were the most significant recommendations that emerge from the discussions?
Yeah, we had serious resolutions. First of all, we had key thematic areas of our discussions during the 3 days. One of it is that we were looking at the context and the outlook of the country in terms of peace and security. And we had regional representation where some of our colleagues from the region were able to present about the issue of peace within the region. Like Bara Ghazal was representing Greater Equatoria and Greater Upper Nile. And we also had a learning from the region, because we had our neighbors also who had a history of violence, and today they are relatively peaceful. So we also learn from them what helped them and what actually pushed them out of the crisis that they had to start the journey of transitioning towards democracy, where they are holding peaceful and regular elections, where they are able to develop their communities, where communities are not able to also use the gun as a way of survival and also protection. We had experts from Kenya and from Uganda, constitutional experts, and also justice experts. And there was a great learning from them actually on how we can be able to move forward. And one of the learning forward from the region is that justice is central to peace building. And the other one is that citizens' engagement is paramount, because decisions have to be based on the will of the people. And early warning, atrocity prevention is very key. And then we need to avoid personalizing politics. Politics should be, an issue that everyone can participate without personalizing it. And then economic recovery in terms of livelihood, survival, and also in terms of decentralizing peace, so that at the community level, peace becomes an initiative that communities own, and they can be able to participate in it. So we had 12 resolutions of the 3 days deliberations. And in those resolutions, one of it is that we need to have the peace agreement fully implemented. We appreciate that much as the implementation is going slow, but the mechanisms and the reforms within the peace agreement are critical. And that means we are calling for the full implementation of the agreement, and also we are calling for elections to be held. And that means within the context of the transition, people should be able to go to elections without power sharing and with all the challenges that we are having. The second resolution is about inclusive political dialogue. And in this one, we are calling also that the political parties and the signatories to the agreement need to dialogue. And I think this is the call that every person had been calling, including the international partners who participated. And also, as you heard from Honorable Adut, the senior presidential envoy, she also encouraged for dialogue, including at the grassroots level. So that means that dialogue becomes paramount. And how can we go for dialogue? We need to make sure that those detained, those who are outside the country, they are brought in so that they can sit together and dialogue for some of the political challenges that are facing them in the implementation of the agreement. So to just go quickly, some of the things, resolutions include inclusive governance and gender participation, where the 35% affirmative action has to be implemented in Latin spirit, strengthening the civic and the political space, and media freedom, because currently the civic space is shrinking. And there's a lot of fear, and if we are to go for dialogue, we need an environment that favors that. Judicial strengthening, as you said, there are key recommendations from the Judicial Reform Committee, and one of it is to ensure that the judiciary get enough resources so that they build their infrastructure, the judges are well cared for, and then justice can be given to the people, and also to safeguard their independence so that they can be able to apply the law without challenges. Conditional elections, one of the things that came out strongly was we need a constitution before we can go for elections. And going for elections without a strong constitution, actually one participant said that means if we promote elections without a permanent and strong constitution, we are not de-escalating conflict, but we are escalating conflict. So that also came out strongly. Issues of transitional justice, the process is ongoing, it needs to be operationalized so that people can go for national healing, reconciliation. Communities who are affected can get rewarded, and also justice should be given to the people. And then humanitarian, we discussed about it, the protection of aid workers and also protection of civilians and access to humanitarian. We discussed also the issue of climate resilience. As you know, we are faced with flooding every year. We are having flood, or we are having issues of drought, but there are no solutions. So we may need a policy or a law on how we can be able to address climate shocks, and also how we can be able to help communities who are affected by the flood and by drought to be able to survive. We also had the issue of pastoral management. How do we have good policies that support pastoralists so that they are not able to also risk their animals and also risk their lives? The private sector is one of the issues that could address economic recovery, and how do we empower South Sudanese to be investors rather than just recipients. And I think those were the issues that were discussed.
Thank you so much, activist Nasiwa. And now over to you, Advocate Juma Marbor. One of the major concerns raised was partial implementation of the access. And from that's a legal and governance perspective, what gaps remain unresolved, and why are some of these parties so reluctant and they are so selective also in implementing the peace agreement?
Yeah, thank you so much for hosting us this evening, and we really appreciate the discussions. They are contextual and immediate. The peace agreement, as you have said, has been selectively implemented by the parties to the agreement on the basis that they look at what belongs to them and leave out what belongs to the citizen. And the center of all this is the security sector reform, which is on Chapter 2, which has largely been ignored until they want taking back the country into the crisis that we are seeing in the side of Nasser and also in Yambio and even recently Eastern Equatoria. And this is because if you look at the text and the content of the peace agreement, it is full of reforms in the country. And if it was to be implemented to the letter and spirit, South Sudan would have moved to the next level.
Now, are you telling us some of these politicians are against reforms?
Absolutely. If you can see Chapter 1, what they have done in Chapter 1, it is all about governance. And you have seen they were able to very quickly rush in and appoint themselves into the positions that they have in terms of cabinet, in terms of even the secretaries general, in terms of the undersecretaries. So the whole of Chapter 1 almost got implemented, and this is because it is a political chapter that talk about the government, the formation of the government. But when it comes to Chapter 2, you hear excuses like we don't have guns, we don't have uniform, we don't have tie-in for the cantonment areas, and we don't want to reintegrate because of so many excuses, pointing fingers here and there. So the agreement has been implemented selectively. You look at Chapter 3, the issue of humanitarian. Yeah. You look at Chapter 4. You look at Chapter 5, transitional justice. You look at Chapter 6, constitution-making process. Everything is moving on snail speed because it does not affect them politically. But when it comes to Chapter 7 and Chapter 8, if you look at the implementation and the renewal and the extension of the government, they will quickly rush to 8.4 and start now amending that particular article. So, like they have been saying, even in their own assessment of how much has been implemented, they say it is only 10%. So for 7 years, and you have only implemented 10% of the agreement, that is a very big embarrassment, and it calls back on the parties to the agreement. And that is why when we had this consultation, we were able to ask for a renewed kind of dialogue on how we should be able to again capture or recapture the gain that have been made in terms of Chapter 2, where they graduated the first unified forces, but even the deployment was not done. And then Chapter 3, humanitarian has been left to the international community. Chapter 4, economic reforms, nothing has been touched on it because instead the corrupt practices are coming up almost every day. And that is why up to today we have banks without cash. Citizens can go to the bank and they cannot get their own money, even if you don't rely on the government salary, which has not been coming for the last 2 years. So, but Chapter 5, where we have been participating in as members of the technical committee, the three of us, coincidentally, had been moved to a certain level, whereby we have the laws in place now, and the transitional justice mechanism are to be established in the next coming month. But then Chapter 6 on the constitution making process is okay. The commission has been established. There are ongoing public consultation and civic education on the constitution making process. RGMEC on Chapter 7 is confused of what to do, although they are the monitors of the peace agreement, and it is very difficult dealing with the parties. I also happen to be a member of the RGMEC representing the civil society. So the whole peace agreement need, again, we will continue using this same word, revitalization. We need again to come back to the drawing board and ask ourselves with the political parties, what do we do? Because this document is stagnated. It is not moving. So we need to come back and ask ourselves question, what do we do? We have extended it for another 2 years, talking about election in 2026, but up to now, there is nothing that has been done to show that we are going for election in 2026.
All right. Yeah. Now, Advocate Mabor, let me bring you back into this particular national dialogue that has just concluded. If a document can be, of which in less than even 3 years, the agreement can be implemented, and if it can take more than 7 years, why do you think having such a national dialogue is necessary at the moment?
I think it is important because we need also to come back and ask ourselves, what are we doing? Some reasoning may come back, because if you look at the way South Sudan has been from 2005 up to where we are now, every year is like we are moving backward. We are not moving forward. And I think this will need self-evaluation as South Sudanese. And that's why we are proposing the coming of mind together, and then we think through our heart, not through our eyes or through our political lenses. We just think to ourselves, what is it that we are doing for our country? And maybe when we come and reason together, we may find an alternative to all this that has been going on. But to be honest, it is all about leadership. It is about political will to move this thing forward. There is nothing difficult. If you have read, and I think you might have read because you are a media personality and you are privy to most of this information, there is absolutely nothing hard in implementing the peace agreement. The narrative has been there that this peace agreement has been made in such a complicated way that it cannot be implemented. But why do you get offices for the 5 vice presidents and you are able to give them the escort of over 20 vehicles? They all have bodyguard, they all have houses, they all have offices. If you can implement that aspect,
and even expand the parliament,
and then you expand the parliament to about 650. So why can't you also implement all the other sectors? Because nothing is difficult.
Thank you for sharing your insight. Let me invite now Galdino. Citizens raise aspirations around that security, economic opportunities, and civic freedoms. To you, basically, today is 5th of December. An election is not far away from now. Out of all these 3 important items, the security, the economic, and the freedom, which one do you see as urgently needed?
Thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I'm also passing my regards to all the listeners of iRadio out there. I think you have asked me one of the most difficult. Which one is really a priority? The 3 you have mentioned are intertwined and they move together. Actually, removing one and say this one is much more important than the other is more or less like taking out the critical aspect of moving forward in terms of our country moving toward peace. I would rather say the most important thing right now is actually peace, and peace can only come if the agreement is implemented and it is start with the security. We have talked about the unification of forces. That has been always an issue. Unification of forces is very important. Had we move together and unify the forces, I'm sure the conflict we're experiencing now would have been de-escalated. You see, we have gone back now to start talking of dialogue and dialogue simply because one aspect of the peace agreement has been ignored. And this is bringing the forces, those who have been fighting, together into one unit in order for us to have a national army. That one is very critical for peace. However, civic space is also another aspect that is very, very important. Politicians need to talk. We also in the civil society need to talk. We are all contributing for the welfare of this country. If that space is not allowed, I think there will be no forum, no place for us to discuss issues affecting us and seeking solutions and getting those solutions in order to move the country forward. And again, I say to you, these things are intertwined. In terms of economy, all this will be possible if our economy is strong. Our late leader, Dr. John, used to say, a poor country means the citizens are very poor. But a rich country means the citizens are rich. And this simply means that opportunities that will empower the people of this country need to be given. Peace need to be in place. Economic opportunities in order for people to engage in both manufacturing, agricultural activities or trade. All these constitute part and parcel of what we say the economic empowerment. So the three, to me, I said you have cornered me, but I'm telling you the three are all important and they are key in order to move our country forward.
Lino, talking about that particular piece you mentioned at the start of your statement, at the moment we have witnessed, even within the SPLM-IG, there is a group that defected. Recently we have Nial. And then within SAWA is also divided into two. When talking about the SPLM-IO, there are other group which is led by Stephen Parr. They are calling themselves pro-peace. And those of Oyed Nathalian declared war. And to them, the agreement is completely dead. How do you reconcile this? And time is not also allowing. This is December. Election is at the corner.
That's why if you look at the resolutions of the conference that we have just concluded, I think South Sudanese are saying there's only one solution, dialogue. We need to talk. If we don't talk, it will be very difficult to overcome all these challenges. I think all the groups you have mentioned have their own reasons as to why they have taken certain lines. Nyal could be having reasons, or yet could be having reasons. Mention them. All those who are opposed, plus the internal dissent, which is, plus, the dissatisfaction. We have to talk. The only solution is we talk, not to pick arms to fight, because we are saying if you want to solve a problem using arms, it comes up with a cost. Destruction of property, destruction of livelihood, killing and all this. All these are evil. We in the civil society say that's wrong. We need a forum. We need a place where everybody can express his or her own dissatisfaction and come up with solutions of how this country should look like.
All right.
That's what we want.
Activist Jacqueline, do you really believe in dialogue? If so, let me give you just few examples. The peace agreement, which is currently very difficult to be implemented, was negotiated through dialogue. And here we are. So the question is, if South Sudanese cannot honor what they have agreed, do you still convince someone who is listening to this show that dialogue is the way for this country to have a lasting peace?
Thank you, James. I think it's not South Sudanese who are not dialoguing around the peace agreement or making the peace agreement not to be implemented. It's South Sudanese leaders and parties. So the South Sudanese people, they don't have a problem. And if you go across the state, what they say is that itakum nas juba ya nas na mashakil. Itakum ya gijibu la na mashakil, la na maindu mashakil. Anna kana guiding sawa mini zaman na nyanya wala mini zaman munu anna guiding sawa. So I think it's wrong to say South Sudanese are failing dialogue. I will say that this dialogue is unique because we are talking as a people. That this process is having a problem, the process that is signed by the parties. How can the people of South Sudan be part of the process to accelerate what the parties cannot move forward. And that means we are looking at the mechanisms of the peace process. We are looking at the current context and at each of the region and the state. What is happening there? Why is there a crisis? And what can the people do to de-escalate the crisis? And that means people need to be having a change of attitude, and also to be having the, to know that peace is important. And the dialogue means no matter even how you disagree, you can dialogue. The parliament is there having a role to discuss these issues. The community should also be able to check who is the one causing the problem in our community, and they have a dialogue with them. So that means peace should go in the hands of the people. And we believe, as you said, that the peace agreement and all this has not been implemented and the parties have been violating. So ownership of the peace should also be with the people, not only with parties who sign it. And I think this is where planting the seed of peace at the community level, at the citizens level, become important, so that it grows and it comes at the higher level. I believe strongly in dialogue. There is nothing that you can solve with a gun. We have seen how the gun class all over the world have really caused destruction in their own countries. South Sudan is not unique to that. So that means that we don't need to have the gun as a way of governance. We need to have a governance where we dialogue, where we engaged, and where we find decisions that are founded on the aspect of non-violence. And I think the examples you gave of, now anyone waking up and getting angry and I need a gun cannot help. And that's why we say, yes, they may have genuine reason. Maybe they tried and they are not listening. So why can't we have that space for dialogue? And I think this is where we are saying, if all these things, the challenges, and if you ask them what are the root causes, why are you defecting, they'll tell you 1, 2, 3, which are what we found out in the dialogue. So that means those are the challenges, and there's no way we can say those challenges can be solved with guns. We need the space. They need the space as politicians, so that these issues are dialogue. So we had been calling for this dialogue, and even the citizens themselves, they know that dialogues have not been implemented, but dialogue for peace should be the paramount thing. Some of the dialogues are maybe having different motives, but for us here is dialogue for peace.
Right.
And this is what we underscore.
Advocate Juma Tabialga Mujtama indu dor ashan kef indu dor jiden ashan hijibu salam fi dawla, lekin fi itifagia diamond communities gisi bumhon bara. This time around communities bindu dor kef ashan lo fi baden mushkila ben seisin ma basir ma mujtama مثلا في راجة, مثلا في توريد, مثلا في رang, مثلا في يامبيو. مرحبا.
Thank you. I will still answer that in English because Arabic بتاعي تعبان شوية ما بوصل للناس في Western Bargazal ولا Western Equatoria عشان Arabic بتوع منديك تقيل. But then the issue of dialogue and inclusion is a very important thing, and that is why the other dialogue that you have talked about failed, because they have been exclusive to political parties. And these are the people who have been negotiating, looking largely at positions and what should go with who. And that is why most of all those dialogue, including even the RSS, failed, because they were being negotiated with the political lenses on. Now, the dialogue that we are calling is to be inclusive in such a way that everybody should be on board. Yes, we can say most of the problems that the local people face are not directly related to what is happening at the national level. They are not political in nature. They may be driven by resources, issues of land, issues of cattle, and the rest of the thing. But they are nonetheless indirectly connected to the national stability, because if you fail to deliver services to the local people, then there will be that scarcity in the local resources where all of them will have now to fight for the little that they have. So in order for us now to come up with a dialogue is to address very comprehensively the problem of South Sudan? That is the question that we need to ask ourselves. What is the fundamental problem of South Sudan? You look at the service aspects. If we can be able to provide water, health care, roads, electricity to some of the people at the rural areas, why should they be killing themselves?
All right.
So what we want to do is to make sure that as we even start this dialogue, and we have been discussing amongst ourselves, there need to be involved traditional leadership such that their views and their concerns are also added to the final text of what would be an agreement after the inclusive dialogue.
Thank you. Quickly to that, Galdino, we have South Sudanese currently who are in Ethiopia, Uganda, Kenya, and the rest of the world, and their voices are equally important for this country to move forward. Now, what immediate action needed to build public trust, and those who are also in diaspora come back home and rebuild South Sudan?
Well, you know, there is nothing better than peace, and that's why our discussion is always to say we need a peaceful country. You know, these people left the country simply because we could not sustain our peace. We did not have the peace. That's why they ran away for a peaceful space somewhere else. I can only say there is nowhere better than home. As a South Sudanese, there is nowhere on earth better than South Sudan for me. So in the same way, I'm sure those who are out there who have been forced to leave this country have the same feeling that home is home and they need to be here. And this is what we can tell to our leadership, to the parties involved in all these skirmishes, that prioritize peace. That's the only way. If peace is available, our people will be able to come back home from the diaspora, those who are in our nearby countries, in their millions, in Uganda, in Kenya, in Ethiopia, basically in BRC, all this will be able to come back home if peace is. They are there not because they love those countries, but they feel that that's the only place they can stay for now, because there is sort of peace in those countries.
All right. Quickly to you, activist Nasiwa, what citizens should expect next after the dialogue now?
We had key recommendations of what we may want to take forward. One of the recommendations is that we are going to be doing dissemination and consultations around the outcome document of the stakeholders dialogue to share with citizens what was discussed, what were some of the takeaways, and what role they can be able to play. The other one is that we...
When is that probably?
Next year.
Next year,
when
okay.
people come back for the next year. And we are also going to be embarking on the No Return to War campaign. So to the citizens, we will say that be part of this No Return to War because peace is in your hands and you have the power to de-escalate violence in your community and at your state and also at the national level.
Is that campaign going to be a nationwide initiative or within Juba only?
Nationwide, because we had also our representatives from the states. They are going to pick it up also. So the campaign is going to be one of our major things, because we don't want to go back to war, and we also want communities to own the peace processes and peace building. It doesn't mean that they have to be owning the agreement, but peace is in their hands. And that means the little they do to make sure that they can be able to sleep peaceful, they can be able to do farming in their communities, their children can be able to go to school, is what we want. And it's a responsibility collectively. The other aspect we are going to be doing is to also engage and empower the citizens to participate in the peace process mechanisms. Like there's the constitution making process. What are we going to do? We need to make submissions. We need to participate in the public consultations. The transitional justice process is upcoming. They need to know what is transitional justice and how can they also be able to participate. So next year we'll have the civic engagement, the peace mechanisms, we'll have the campaign, and also we'll be able to disseminate the outcome document and see what programs can be done at the local level. than at the national level.
Thank you. Dear listener, it's your turn now to grab that cell phone and ask your question to my guest right here in the studio after the break.
For news and the music, keep it iRadio.
It's a Baghdad Diamond Wenisuma iRadio ala numrata telefon 0911-986-986 au itapi reselu risala ala numra 0913-986-986.
Awal mukhalama iRadio.
Hello, Madrama James.
Yes, Ustaz Willy Milologowan.
Asuna mana.
Ma batala khuna.
مثال كله تا ومثال كله دي حاجة الماركت اللي استدينا في إذا فن الأرض المفضل كمان يعني كلهم.
شكرا.
وحقيقة من هون الكلامات كله كويس، كلاماتهم كله كويس جدا جدا يعني، لكن أنا بس الناس رمون أنا ما أعرف يعني القاسي طبعا حاجات كلامات الكويس كويس ده في النهاية بيجي كم شيء ده ده كله كنا تابعين كان الناس مغامرة الكويس السنة زيرة عشان كان بيكون في بيننا في تماسك، بيكون في يعني صداقة كويس بيننا كان يعني. أي كلامات الكويس ده يجي في زمن الكلاس زمن بيها صفات كلاس بيجي ما يعني كان سمو كان بيس يعني من بيحس اللي سني يعني كان واحد يكون قاعد في كل شيء ولا شنو لأنه كده كان من بيدي كان أصعب فقدوا سنة واحدة التجارات يعني كلامات جري بيكلموا ولا هي شنو ولا بيجي سياسة جديد كاملهم زمن ده كلنا قاعدين ما نتابعين عندنا مواطنين نتابعين شديد يعني كلامات الكود كان من بدري كان مثلا اللي كان بيكون ماضي ممكن بيجي لنا مو بعملنا تسكي يساعدوا لنا كلامات العراق نقول لأن كده نفهم أنا درس منه زار من كلامات سنة زي درس منهم أن في بعد ما بعد لكن أنا بيجا كان بيجا مشاكل بيجا كتير بيننا المواطنين بيجا وأجت كان زي ده كان بعد مناس عشان كان بيكون في جواد كويس أنا جايبه مستقبل كان كبير لكن من جاء متأخر في زمن ولاك كده يعني مو بيجا يعني بيجا شنو
ما في مشكلة نعم مون بجواب إيتا
الاثنين أسمع الاثنين وكلموا كلام كويس على الناس طبعا انتخابات السنه الجايه بتعمل ليست بتاعته لكن انا كنت انا كلمهم يعني اصلي بعد ما معي ثانيين كمان تعرف في بلد ثانيه ثانيين في حوالي ثانيين خلاص هم كان موسيقى في كان بيغنوا في دوال ياكو هنا في انتخابات كده ما هذا هو مشاكل لك ما هذا كله قفلت هذا ما الاسود بدون بالله ولا بيجي معلم لا معلم كله مشاكل في بعض من المعلم كمان تاني فيه مشاكل كتير بين كوتا حكومه وكوتا حركه شعبيه في مره وكنا نتساوى الناس الكل ده اللي كلهم ايه مواطنين يلا بمحطه الكبه الدافع ده اللي قالوا كانت اداره ديمقراطيه الانتخابات قال لك كذا دوائر كانت السنه اللي فاتت 2000 كم دي كانوا ذكروها بالداو اصلا هو ناقص في بعض الدوائر ما بدها في انا بالداول يجيبها هنا ولا في ولا في محل ذاته دي ثلاثه يعملوا
شكرا لكنا ويلي من لولوغوان هنا في جوبا وسد ويلي مواطنين الغتاب زيادة فكرة الجديد وقيافة زي كان بخون من بدري مشكلة وين لهذه الزمان زي هاي راديو
Yes, iRadio.
Yes.
Yeah, my regard to my honorables who are in the studio with you. They talk really something very good.
Thank you so much, Oporoda.
Yes, this is Oporoda. Only my question to them, they talk very nice. This is what we want to hear. But all they are talking of, now the implementation of the bilateral peace agreement is not going as they are putting it. Now really, we know the two leaders who are now leading the country, the one of IO and SPLIG. These are the two guys who have been in the liberation. They fought for this country. And while they were liberating us, we knew this country we are going not to suffer like this. But now they turn us ups and down.
So what's your question to my guest?
My question is, what exactly? I know these two leaders, they should be confronted. Who is refusing to bring really the peace in this country? Because after we brought the independence, we knew there will be something good. But after we got the independence, they start to fight among themselves. Why they don't point mistake out than keeping it like this?
All right, thank you, Proda. Here in Juba, why are civil societies not really pointing fingers at some of these leaders and point out their mistake? 1, 2, 3. Final caller for now. iRadio.
Yes, hello, iRadio.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, Ustaz William Ronaldo Ole from Western Bargazal State.
Yeah, quick question because of time.
Okay, my question that I also have comment on.
Yeah, do that in less than 1 minute and then.
Okay, I do appreciate the honorable guests in the studio. As they mentioned many things, and now in the country you can see multiple parties. What could be the solution to unite this party in order to reduce the number of the parties in the country?
Thank you very much.
Okay, this now, yeah.
Thank you.
That's my question today.
Thank you very much. I have to hear because of time. William should be my last caller. Ngorton, thank you so much for joining us live from Nairobi. We have George James live from WOW. Thank you for the privilege of your company. Thomas Kusanga, thank you as well for joining us. W. Christopher from Yambio, Western Equatoria State. Thank you for the privilege of your company. 3 good questions to 3 of them. Let me start with Advocate Juma, plus your last remarks as we are coming to the end of our conversation. Welcome.
Okay. I think I will just answer one question, the last one from William Ronaldo. The rest will be answered by my colleague. The issue of political parties, most of them are briefcase political parties, by the way. And this is the work of the Political Parties Council to see how they can be screened. But the most important screening will happen when people go for election, because each party must have a threshold to meet before they are allowed to contest in the election. So if people go to election in 2026 and then these parties do not have the capacity to contest, then automatically they should be out. But again, having many political parties is not a bad thing, because it opens up space for democracy and civic education. So it is good that we have many political parties, and if people go for election, they will automatically reduce based on the requirement. My last remark is that as South Sudanese, we really need to differentiate ourselves from our political leaders in such a way that we need to dialogue, even at our own homes. If we are peaceful, then it would have added and contribute to the peaceful coexistence that we require in the country.
Thank you. To Nasiwa, why are civil society not pointing out mistakes of politicians in the country?
Thank you very much. And for that question, I don't think that civil society have not been pointing at these issues. And if you follow some of our discussions, including online, we raise these issues, and especially issues of leadership for the peace process implementation, and also calling on the parties to implement our access. I think I always say that the peace agreement, people say it is dead, it's alive, it's in the ICU. I say that is the will to implement the agreement which is dead, or probably which is in the ICU. So that means that we need to make sure that we bring a new spirit to peace in South Sudan. And whether it's in the agreement, whether it's at the grassroots, or different pieces of the peace, we need to bring them together. And that means that as citizens, we also need to be holding the leaders accountable. So civil society will raise the voice, but also citizens need to be holding leaders accountable and demanding for peace. And I think peace for me as a lawyer is a human right issue, because if there is no peace, people will not have right to live, they will not have right to other things, they will not be protected, their property will not be protected, they will not have the right to education, the right to health, and so forth. So we need peace so that everybody can be ready.
Right.
And I think someone asked, why are we delaying and we are now bringing this issue now? And I'll say that we have been in record demanding for this, and we had extended periods, like twice. And as civil society, even in the first extension, we doubted it. The second one, we even didn't vote for it. So it's high time that if extensions cannot yield what we want, and then what is required. So this dialogue is about soul searching. And as my colleague Juma said, it's about now the heart rather than the politics around peace. And finally, I'll say that as South Sudanese, honestly, we don't need to be living in a violent situation. The region, the countries, the world is moving on, and we have all the resources, as you see in the discussions. But because of the violence, they are not used properly. And also because of this, we become, our resources and us become vulnerable globally. So we need to come back to our senses and talk, no matter how the bitter truth is, we accept it, and also urge our leaders to accept it, and let us move on.
Thank you. Over to you, Galdino. If you take a look at the transitional constitution, since it was adopted, it's 20 years exactly today. And at the same time, it has been amended more than 10 times. This time around, what is the way forward? A question from that's Willie from the logo. What's your take, quickly?
Thank you very much. I will say Willie is right to us. Countries are governed by constitutions as the overall law of the land. And we had the transition constitution all along. And that's why actually Jacqueline Nasiwa mentioned that people are saying we need a permanent constitution for elections to be conducted at the right time. That's the call. And all of us are saying so. Let us expedite the process of making a permanent constitution so that we have a law that all of us abide to.
All right. Thank you, Galdino, activist Nasiwa, Advocate Chuma, for coming up to here, dear listener. Because of time, we have come to the end of our conversation. And Darlington Moses, Awan Moses, these are the guys behind our social media coverage. I've been your host, Madrama at James.